My name is Michael Andrew Pett. I am a retired disabled veteran in the United States Army. I spent 21 and a half years on the enlisted side, 15 of which were active duty and the rest was in the National Guard. Held several MOSs or military occupational specialties, ranging from HR to truck driving to recruitment, and deployed to Iraq in 2003, 4, and 5 as a casualty operations specialist. So that's who I am as a veteran. Who I was and who I am as a civilian is a little bit different, but still supporting the community. So for the better part of the last decade plus, I've been at the helm of Accenture and Uber, both as their military recruiting lead. Two different titles at two different organizations, but that more or less is kind of who I am and how I've created an identity within the corporate space. It's a little bit of talent acquisition, a little bit of business development, but a lot of understanding and really relationship building within the DoD and armed forces space.
Because I know you're absolutely, in your corporate roles, have been an advocate for veterans, and you've really been kind of the translator, in my view, and correct me if I've got it wrong, but you've been like the translator between the corporate culture and the military culture, going both ways. So
Yep.
You're educating the corporate culture and leadership about the value of hiring veterans and how to be smart and be competitive in the job market for that talent. But also, once you have veteran job candidates, you're educating them and helping them work through the process of
No,
making
you're
that
spot on.
transition. Is that about
You're
right?
absolutely right. Yeah, I consider myself to be somewhat of a translator, helping the veteran or military spouse or partner understand what the corporate culture is like, access points, maybe if there's upskilling that's required, but really helping kind of set the tone and help them understand without making them feel uncomfortable or awkward about what it's like as they don this new uniform. But then also helping the corporate culture understand how to work best with folks from the armed forces space. And then on top of that, really serving as a conduit between the veteran and armed forces community, the corporate partners, but also the nonprofit VSOs that are out there, helping bridge that gap and that language barrier that still exist. And we've been working together a long time, but that still really exists within this space. So, that's kind of where I get brought in to help an organization.
I actually was really surprised when you and I were working together many years ago that the issues we were addressing and trying to solve for were the very same issues I wrote about in my first book, Field Tested, like 11 or 12 years ago. I was like, wait a minute. Really? I mean, yes, there have been advances for sure. I mean, at the time that I wrote that, there weren't people like you in roles like the ones that you've played. Well, let me start by asking you to just say a few words about how you would describe your transition from 21 years in military service to the world of civilian life, but also civilian work.
My transition was awful. I did not think about it smartly. And it's more so you don't know what you don't know, so you can't necessarily shame yourself. But good luck telling yourself as you're going through that exercise, right? For me, it was really, really challenging because all I wanted to do was fit in, not get picked on, and not be singled out for being the different person. But unfortunately, that's inevitable. Right. So what I began to do as I went through this transition journey is confide in my civilian counterparts, really ask some very intentional questions to figure out what I needed to do to make myself look a little bit more like everybody else. Document it all because I knew for damn sure that if I was going to go through a tough transition, and I have a lot of privilege, okay, a straight white male in today's society, college educated, there's a lot of advancement opportunities that I had at my fingertips, but I knew damn well that if I am sad, if I'm depressed, if I'm terrified and all the other emotions that one goes through, then I know there's so many other people that are going to benefit from me documenting this and sharing those notes. So to surmise your question, it was awful, But thankfully, I leaned in, found my footing, latched on to amazing leaders and friends and colleagues like yourself. And eventually I got a good understanding of what I needed to do for the first stages of the transition.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. Thanks for sharing that. Appreciate your authenticity on that. I know it's, easy to talk about, hard to kind of like really absorb.
Yeah.
One of the things that hearing you say that reminded me of one of the things that I appreciated so much about working with you was that you were able to really get that I was there to be of service, and you didn't you would be amazed how much I encountered this skepticism and mistrust because I'm not a veteran, so therefore I must be a predatory business person out there to trying to use that, just the most awful assumptions people made about veterans, particularly made about me, that
Mhm.
made it hard for me to do what I was trying to do, which was just to be helpful. And so when you and I encountered each other, we had the green light to like push forward and create an amazing program because everybody knew that it was needed. And so
Absolutely.
we were the people who had the solution and we got to work together to do that. But you were one of the first people coming from a military background who really got it and said, let's go, let's roll, and we did amazing work together on
Yes, we
behalf
did.
of veterans. Would you not
Mhm.
agree?
Totally agree. Totally agree.
So maybe
You
that makes me sound kind of victim-y, but
No, God dang, no, 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 no. You came at it with empathy. You understood, okay, like Michael, from a TA perspective, or a hiring perspective, got it. You guys, you've cracked the code on that and figured out the way, but you challenged me, which is something that and you met me in a way to where it was for an improvement, right? Like, hey, there's things that I'm a subject matter expert, I meaning you, that maybe you haven't necessarily thought about, or have you ran into trouble? You asked me questions. You didn't, you never gave me the impression of a WIFM, what's in it for me? Like there was
uh,
never any of that. You came from, like I said, a tremendous place of caring, and that's what we all need. And hell yeah, I latched onto you, of course. But the thing that really dawned on me after reading the first couple of pages is that the transition process never ends. A lot of people generally kind of think it does after they first land their first role or get their first promotion within their organization, but they begin to kind of only think about it through a corporate lens. Okay, LinkedIn, resume, network, application. All right, moving on. But what they don't think about it is from the new perspective that you're taking on with at ease is the psychological aspect, the psychosocial pieces, which are unbelievably paramount to the transition journey. They're super important and they're often overlooked. And so much so that, and when I read the first chapter and we had the first conversation, I told you that I don't believe that anyone is even concentrating on this area. And this is the biggest, most important part of the transition process. When I chose to leave Uber, I was financially, fine, right? I could take the time. So the stress level from that perspective wasn't weighing on me. It was the identity. It was the understanding what value, what my purpose was, how I can continue to provide impact. All of those things were gone. So as your first chapter unfolds, that the end is the first piece, it brought me back to when I took my uniform off for the last time. And it ended with an ending moment. And
mhm,
in this stage, it was my identity was being altered and I had to get comfortable in my new skin again, right? And it felt
mhm.
like day one at Accenture when put on my suit and I, took my little lunchbox into the office and somebody, kind of looked at me like I was a goofball. But it's about being comfortable in that new skin. And there were things, I consider myself somewhat of a transition subject matter expert, but on the corporate side definitely not on the social or the psychological aspects of it, because those were the parts that I was missing. And when I spoke to you, it was about the self-awareness angle point, right? And understanding where you're at on that spectrum is going to lead to purposeful and intentional decision making that will be helpful to your transition. When I looked at that, I got upset emotionally. And it wasn't that I was angry. It was more so, it was a realization that I wasn't being true to myself, that I wasn't exhibiting self-awareness. What I was instead doing was masking what I
Mm,
used to be known as, what my previous identity was. And I was holding on to that still instead of looking at it in the current state. So for that, it was a real aha moment. The light bulb went off, and I said, like most people say when they transition, ah, shit. Okay. And
yeah.
that's when it began to really kind of click. And I started kind of looking at the questionnaires. So, like I said, the first chapter, and I'm into chapter 2 now, and it's really, really helping out with this process. But I guess if I can speak to the people tuning in and anybody you might share this with, the transition never stops. You could be wildly successful in your corporate and civilian life, but when you make a change, you need to start over. Even if you fully understand the steps and processes, you really need to take a start over and make sure you look at yourself within. And that is exactly what At Ease Chapter 1 has done. So who knows? By the end of this, I could be, very, very well rounded. And that's what I'm looking forward to. That's what.
What a great recap. Thanks for sharing that. Yeah, I mean, I think it might be kind of overwhelming and disheartening to hear that the transition never ends, but really, I mean, I think you're speaking to a more universal concept, which is that as long as we're alive, we're learning, hopefully learning and growing. And so every new situation is an opportunity to learn, right? And
Absolutely.
if we go charging in with all the answers to a brand new situation, whether we were in the military or not, we're going to have issues. But you and I have both spent a lot of years in corporate America working with new hires.
Mhm.
Holy crap. The stuff that people come in with, they want to come in day one, we're gonna like clean this place up, and how the heck has this place been running without me here?
Absolutely. Yeah, 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 yeah. It's like,
It's
whoa,
like
whoa.
slow your roll, dude, and just look and listen for a minute. Yeah.
I'm still very much involved in the professional development pieces for transitioning veterans. And it is now something that I speak to every single one of my students about is self-awareness, understanding where you're at, understanding that, you're almost like a snake in a way where you're constantly changing those layers of skin.
Mm,
And once again, just growing comfortable within them and, accepting it head on. You can't avoid
yeah.
it. You avoid it, it's going to be problematic.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, the tendency will be there at times to just like avoid or, you know, go into denial. I've done it on other issues, right? And so when things get tough, it's like, ooh, what you did in your story, Mike, is you leaned in
Mhm.
and, asked for help and you were humble. That's one of the things in my research, that I've done on this topic, particularly with officers, is that the ones that really succeed and have a smooth transition are humble and they use humor and they're kind of charmingly self-deprecating as they're going along, right? The ones who struggle are the ones who are pushing against the reality that they're going to have to do things really differently.
Yeah.
They
You know,
can't come in with their rank on their shoulder and carry on as if it was last Friday.
I've swam in both waters and I've pushed back and have been resistant to change, reluctant to allow it happen. And then I've accepted it head on. Well, let's put it this way. We got there eventually, right? But when I did, those waters, right? The acceptance piece, the identifying, the humility and asking for help. Once you do that, you can breathe. It doesn't feel like you've got a 10,000-pound gorilla on your chest. The walls stop coming closer and closer to you. You have more space and time. So, like I said, I hope that everyone can get there. I know that not all will, but I think step one is picking up your book, really diving deep in, get a pen, get a marker, take notes and highlight, okay? And there's practical exercises in there that will help people.
So I guess I'm safe in assuming from all this that you'd recommend the book.
2 thumbs up, 100%, fully endorse and fully support this. And I hope that it can get in the hands of every transitioning service person, regardless if you're an O or an E. Absolutely.
You and I both come from a long career at this point in kind of corporate America. However, I know from working with a lot of enlisted folks over the years that the concepts in at ease really apply across the board. I'm wondering if you have any insight or thoughts about kind of how someone who may not be headed for a corporate kind of role would benefit from at ease and maybe guidance for how they
Yeah.
might use
Oh
it.
gosh, yeah. So I don't think it really matters where you're at in your military career, right? Whether you did one enlistment, National Guard, reserves, I don't think it really matters. I think that if you can't understand where you are internally as a human being first, you will not be prepared to take the next steps in the transition process. So I do believe that ease is beneficial to everybody within the armed forces community to fully understand where their starting point is. In the Army, we did land nav a lot. You had your compass, right? You had your protractor, your pencil, your map, and you went off and you did it. At ease is your compass. At ease is going to help you determine where you're going to step off from so you can begin your journey. And like I said, if you can't look inside and you can't have real conversations with yourself about what you truly need to do, then you should not be on LinkedIn. You should not be networking at a high rate with people and making really promises or commitments that you don't know if you can truly keep.
Wow, that is really powerful.
Yeah.
That's powerful because you're speaking to kind of the reality of what happens if you don't do that work. If you don't do that inside work, and I'm coming at this from the standpoint of a leadership coach.
Yeah.
I help leaders get out of their own way or, have even greater success, whatever the case may be. Well, in at ease, but even more so in the accelerated military transition course that is also coming out at the same time. It's being launched at the same time. I talk a lot about this idea that you just said of conversations with self. Like if you don't realize that you're constantly having some kind of conversation with yourself, then who knows how it's impacting you, because it is impacting you. What
Yeah.
goes on in here definitely impacts.
I do believe that you do need to settle the monster inside, right? There's no greater critic than you, right? All the cliches. Your
Yeah.
own worst enemy, right? The world's worst critic is you, right? So all those things. But I want to agree with you 100%. If you're not looking internally, understanding what you're saying to yourself and making sure that those adjectives and those verbs are a lot more positive, right? Then you need to scale back on what your expectations should be as you kind of lean towards a career. So going back to what you said, even if you don't go into corporate America, if you want to go be an entrepreneur, work in retail, work in the service industry, whatever that is, those are all great roles and great opportunities for whoever that is for. But you've got to be honest with yourself, set proper expectations, hold yourself accountable, share what you're thinking and feeling with other people, other coaches, other subject matter experts in that space, because that's step one of the transition journey, full stop. The title of the book, At Ease, right? We talked about this, and I think it really will give both that sense of calm to the reader. Because if you're a civilian, you think at ease, you think calm, peace, tranquility, right? If you're in the military and you hear at ease, you're thinking, okay, someone is speaking to me, but I can sit in a comfortable posture, right? And internalize that information. Both definitions are absolutely correct. So whether you're a civilian, you're an employer, or you're a former or current service person, and you read that title, this book is for